بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم نحمده ونصلي على رسوله الكريم رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. So on two different occasions, Mu'adh bin Jabal Radhi-Allahu anhu gave advice to the people around him about who to go to seek the knowledge of the deen after he departs from this world. And the list was of 4 people in each session, but the names were slightly different. So in one case it was Umar ibn Khattab radiyallahu anhu, and in the other one, Umar radiyallahu anhu was replaced with Abu Darda radiyallahu anhu, whose name was Uwaymir. And he himself mentions that the reason why Umar radiyallahu anhu may be hard to get is because he's going to be very, very busy. So then in the other session in which he was asked to give wasiyah, he gave the name of Abu Darda radiyallahu anhu. Then we talked about one of his famous students, Abdurrahman ibn Ghanam al-Ash'ari, rahimahullah, who may have been a transmitter of his fiqh. If he was a qadi and he was known in his area as a faqih and people came to him, as we mentioned, then most likely, if he was a student of Mu'adh bin Jabal radiyallahu anhu, he was definitely, whatever he had learned from Mu'adh bin Jabal and his understanding, he would pass that on to the people around him. So, but of course that was not enough to preserve the fiqh. You need a lot more than that. So we talked about Abdurrahman ibn Ghanam al-Ash'ari. I want to talk a little bit about his level of fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we've been talking about his fiqh, which is a gift that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bestowed upon him. But how about his spiritual side? His connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We haven't gotten to see too much of that. And we haven't really talked too much about that. And there's really not a whole lot about it anyways. But it's understandable that since this was his most outstanding trait was his fiqh, that's what everybody was always talking about. And every sahabi had a different quality that was outstanding that would be mentioned the most and would be talked about the most in the narrations or in the narrations about that sahabi in the biographies. So there's not too much about him in terms of his ruhaniyah, but of course, being a sahabi of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, we know that he must have a very high level of taqwa of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So here's one example of his taqwa of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And it's narrated by Ibn Umar radiyallahu anhuma. He said once Umar radiyallahu anhu, his father, passed by Mu'adh bin Jabal radiyallahu anhu. This is during the Khilafah of Umar ibn Khattab radiyallahu anhu. He passed by and Mu'adh bin Jabal radiyallahu anhu was crying. So Umar ibn Khattab radiyallahu anhu came to Mu'adh bin Jabal, put his hand around his shoulder and said, "Everything okay? Ma yubkik? Why are you crying? What's going on?" He said, "I remember a hadith that I heard from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam." What? He said, "Inna adna riya'i shirkun. وأحب العبيد إلى الله تبارك وتعالى الأتقياء الأخفياء الذين إذا غابوا لم يفتقدوا وإذا شهدوا لم يعرفوا أولئك أئمة الهدى ومصابيح العلم." I heard a hadith from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in which he said that even a little bit of riya, show, even a little bit, a small amount, a speck of it, is shirk. What is riya? To do something that you're supposed to do for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, You do it for Allah, but maybe 1% is for someone else or for something else. That's, even if that 1% is there, that amal may not be accepted. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala only wants to accept the amal that's 100% for Him. وَأَحَبُّ الْعَبِيدِ إِلَى اللَّهِ. Who is the most beloved to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Al-Atqiya, the ones who have the highest level of taqwa. Al-Akhfiya, the ones who are concealed and hidden. What does concealed and hidden mean? Nobody knows them. Right? Nobody knows them. الَّذِينَ إِذَا غَابُوا, if they disappear, they go away from the city, nobody knows they're gone because nobody knew them in the first place. لَمْ يُفْتَقَدُوا. Nobody's going to go and look for them. وَإِذَا شَهِدُوا لَمْ يُعْرَفُوا. And if they're present and they appear out of nowhere, nobody recognizes them because nobody knows them. They're like strangers. أُولَٰئِكَ أَئِمَّةُ الْهُدَى. These are the imams of guidance. Why is Mu'adh bin Jabal Radhi-Allahu anhu crying? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blessed him with fiqh, tafaqquh. Right? He had this talent. And Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam saw that he was in a place because of his tafaqquh that he could help other people out. Which is great. He helped a lot of people out. He was already a mufti during the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam in Medina Munawwara. And then we talked in one of the previous sessions how even in Makkah Mukarramah, he was a teacher and the main mufti and the qadi. The words were yufaqqihum fid deen. He was teaching them the knowledge of the deen. He was teaching them his fiqh. And then we talked about how he went down in Yemen and he was a qadi there. And he's also calling the Ahl Kitab towards the deen of Allah according to hadith that we read from Sahih Bukhari. So he was very, very well known. People from Yemen knew him. People didn't know Umar ibn Khattab Radhi-Allahu anhu from Yemen. But they knew him because he'd been there, he spent time there, and people loved him. And we need some examples of that. Then he's in Damascus. He's in the seat of learning in the main masjid. And there's 20 Sahaba. And whenever any issue rises and they can't understand it, they turn towards him. And one of the tabi said, I came in the masjid and it's full and they're all surrounding one person. And that person is Mu'adh bin Jabal Radhi-Allahu anhu. So he's very well respected, well known. And now he's thinking, this hadith, it doesn't apply to me. I am certainly not from the akhfiya, the people who are hidden. If I disappear, I suddenly leave the city, everybody's going to know Mu'adh bin Jabal is not here. Where is he? Right? And if I come, everybody knows Mu'adh bin Jabal is here. And everybody's going to come and join. Meet me. There's going to be a gathering within 5 minutes around me. So his fear was, what was his fear? His fear was that my fame will take me to Jahannam, because what if I'm doing this even a little bit for someone else beside Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? What if I'm doing it for myself just to show people what a great person I am? Right? But we have proof that Mu'adh bin Jabal Radhi-Allahu anhu was not like that. That he wasn't doing it with the intention of riyā, to show people, to raise his status in the eyes of people, to become respected. We have a proof. What is that proof? He's a Sahabi. No. That's not the proof that I want to present. The proof is that when someone does something for someone else beside Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they have a corrupt heart. They don't have fear that, I'm not amongst the akhfiya. I should be amongst the hidden ones. I don't have taqwa of Allah. They don't have that level of self-reflection, because if they had that level of self-reflection, then they would never do riyā in the first place. The fact that Mu'adh bin Jabal is crying over the fact that maybe this hadith is applying to him, he's not one of the A'imma of Huda, of guidance, because this hadith doesn't apply to him, because he's not amongst the akhfiya. So now he fears that maybe it's because of riyā that he's doing all this. That's a sign that he's not doing it with the intention of riyā. His crying is proof that he's a man of taqwa. So there's a very famous story narrated by Mufti Shafi Rahmatullah Alayhi's son, either Mufti Rafi Uthmani, if I remember correctly, or his oldest son who passed away, who was also a poet, Zaki Kaifi. When Maulana Ilyas Rahmatullah Alayhi was on his deathbed, Maulana Ilyas, who founded the Tabligh Jamaat group, when he was on his deathbed, so Mufti Shafi Rahmatullah Alayhi came to do his iyada. So Mufti Rafi Uthmani says, I was a child that time, 8, 9 years old, so I was sitting a little bit further away. And I saw my father talking to Maulana Ilyas. And Maulana Ilyas was crying like a baby. And they were talking, but I couldn't hear what they were saying. And I thought my father made him cry. He must have done something or said something that Maulana Ilyas just started crying like a baby. And I was really curious to know, what did my father say to him? Or what did he say to my father? And my father responded, and he's just so sad and crying and sobbing. So he said, we stayed there for a little while, and my father consoled him, and then Maulana Ilyas Rahmatullah Alayhi, he settled down a little bit, felt a little better, but he was still wiping his tears. And then we left. He said, I turned to my father after we left, said, Abu Jan, what did you talk about? Like, he was doing fine before that. I mean, he was sick, but he wasn't crying like a baby. He wasn't sobbing. And then you came and you said something to him, and he said something to you, and suddenly he just broke down. He said, Maulana Ilyas said to me, he said, I have a fear in my heart. And I need to share it with you because I'm very, very scared. I said, what is that fear? He said, I fear that all this work that I've been doing with the Jamaat, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has really blessed it. Because within Maulana Ilyas Rahmatullah Alayhi's lifetime, the Jamaat has spread all over the subcontinent. All over. Jamaats were going all over the place within a few years. Maulana Ilyas Rahmatullah Alayhi said, I fear that this is a form of istidraj. Meaning that this is shaitan using this as a way for me to feel that I've accomplished something, that I've gotten somewhere in life, and I should feel proud of myself that, look, because of me, all this has happened. And really, this is not a blessing of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this is a curse upon me, that I'm just doing this for people. Otherwise, work that's done for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala takes a long time to produce the fruits that you're looking for. And here I'm seeing the results within a few years. It seems like it's not the blessing of Allah. Shaitan helped in spreading this work, so he could take me to Jahannam. And I fear I'm going to go to Jahannam now. So Mufti Shafi Rahmatullah Alayhi said to his son, I told him, you have nothing to fear. Because if you were that type of person that was doing it for someone else beside Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and shaitan helped you with it to increase you in your riyah, then you wouldn't be crying right now. You wouldn't have that regret right now. You wouldn't have that fear right now. The fact that you have that fear is proof that you did it only for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And it's the blessing of that fear of Allah and that pure niyyah, that ikhlas that you had, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put blessing in it, and it spread all around. And it'll continue to spread for as long as that ikhlas remains in the people who come after you as well. So after that, Mawlana Yasir rahmatullahi alayhi settled down and felt a little bit better. Because he realized that, yes, that seems like a rational answer, a reasonable reply. Makes sense. And of course, at the time of death, Hadhrat Shaykh Zakaria rahmatullahi alayhi said that you should always have hope of Allah and fear of Allah. But at the time of death, you should have more hope from Allah than you should have fear of Allah. Because at the time of death, when you're in the throes of death, and you have more fear of Allah, there's a chance that a person can become could turn away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. A person will despair in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Lose hope in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And to despair in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is an act of kufr itself. La taqnatu min rahmatillah. Don't ever despair in Allah. Don't ever despair in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So, when Mufti Shafi rahmatullahi alayhi said what he said, that was a chance, an opportunity for Mawlana Yasir rahmatullahi alayhi to feel some of that hope of Allah that he was not feeling at that time. He was feeling more fear of Allah, so that settled him down. He felt better. And of course, it was reasonable too. And we have that same example in Mu'adh bin Jabal Radhi-Allahu anhu here. Exact same example. Of a person who's crying because he fears what? That I'm doing whatever I'm doing because of riyah and I'm famous. Who knows that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is pleased with me, or more likely He's displeased with me because I'm not amongst the akhfiya anymore. And if we look at the world that we live in today, this YouTube and this WhatsApp and these things that just go viral, and instantly a person becomes famous. Instantly, one video, a person becomes famous. And we praise these things. That look, this person, his video went viral, or, oh, that's that person who appeared in that video. And we want our children to be in that place. I want my child to be like that. I want to be like that. I wish I was in his place. This is something to fear, not something to want, something to look up to. Some of our elders have said that the more respect you have in the eyes of people doesn't necessarily mean that the more respect you have with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In fact, it's more likely the opposite. The more respect you have with people, more likely means that the less respect and connection you have with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because the connection that you have with the people and the respect they have for you is something related to the material world, to the dunya. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala hates the material world. It could be fame, it could be something that you did, something that you said. There's even a hadith in Tirmidhi about if a person makes a joke with the intention to make people laugh so that he can get some status in the eyes of people, that person should make his place in the hellfire. So we have comedians, right, who make their money off of just making people laugh, right? I'm not making judgments about anybody, but I'm just saying that we consider it such a good thing nowadays to have your YouTube channel, to be on it, and spreading the deen of Allah. Yeah, you're spreading the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but does that necessarily mean something good? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will spread the deen regardless. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't need YouTube and all these different outlets to spread the deen. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam's name is known to every single person across this world. Every single person, and it's not through YouTube. Muslim and non-Muslim. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants to spread the deen, He can spread it any which way He wants. To think that, this is the way to go, this is how we have to do it. This is just our wishful thinking. Anyhow, his adab. Abdullah bin Samit says, Mu'adh Radhi-Allahu anhu said, Ma bazaqtu an yamini mundu aslamtu. Since I have accepted Islam, I have never spit on my right. I have never spit on my right. We all spit, but we never think which direction. Somebody asks you, when's the last time you spit in which direction? You're like, I don't know about which direction. I never thought about it. You just spit. But for Sahaba Ikram, it was important to show full adab towards the sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was what we mentioned yesterday. That the right side or the right should be given more respect than the left. He doesn't say it in so many words, but the fact that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam always preferred the right for example, if there was a gathering of people and he was passing something out, food, drink, milk, it would always be on the right. Even if Abu Bakr Siddiq was on his left and there was a Arabi on his right, Rasulullah sallallahu gave it to the person on the right first. Even though one time Umar ibn Khattab told him, Ya Rasulullah, Abu Bakr is on your left. Rasulullah sallallahu said, first the right, then the right. And he gave it to the person on the right. So this is a message about the importance of the right for good things. Now, does that mean you can't spit on the right? But this is adab, right? This is adab. It's because of that adab that the Sahaba Ridwanullahi Majma'in had. That adab that they had. And not every Sahabi had this specific adab. They all had different types of adab. One was very special in one respect, in terms of their adab towards certain things. And someone had an adab towards something else. And someone was all around, like Abu Bakr Siddiq, his adab was just all around. But their adab was all based on the same thing, their connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because of their fear of Allah, because their love for Allah, they were thinking, I don't think I should do this. This is like a private communication between them and Allah. Like, I can spit on my right, but I don't think I should. It's not a good idea. Because Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, didn't like using the right for these type of things. They wouldn't think that the hadith doesn't say, or the Quran doesn't say. For them it was all about adab, respect. Let's be respectful. Right? So the Quran and Sunnah teach us respect. Now we have to build it and use it in different ways. They develop that level of respect. Now how we manifest that respect in our life, that may not be in the Quran and Sunnah, but the respect that is being taught itself is in the Quran and Sunnah. It's developed, the seed is planted, and it's watered. Now, how you manifest it, that's up to you. And Sahaba Ridwanullahi Majma'in manifested it in different ways. Like I said, not every single Sahabi showed his respect in the exact same way. There were some respects in which they were all united, they were all the same. But there are some respects in which they were very, very different. So Mu'adh Radhi-Allahu anhu says, Ma bazaqtu an yamini. I never spit on my right since I've accepted Islam. So can you imagine Sahaba like Umar ibn Khattab and Abu Bakr Siddiq radiyallahu anhu who had even a higher level of taqwa? What was their level of adab then? right? The type of respect Sahaba gave to miswak, right? What is miswak? It's a sunnah, right? But just like Muaz radiallahu anhu is showing adab towards the sunnah of yameen, that same adab was shown towards the sunnah of the miswak as well. So for example, they would never put the miswak on the ground. There's no hadith about it, right? There's no hadith about it. But it's a matter of adab, isn't it? Adab for the sunnah, out of love for the sunnah, out of love for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So if you ever see a miswak and you pick it up on the ground, you pick it up and you put it up, who knows, that may be your najat in the eyes of Allah, with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That this servant of mine showed a little bit of adab and I forgive him for that. Right? It's mentioned about Imam Sibwe. He's a great, famous scholar of Arabic grammar. And he was not from the Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah. He was not Sunni. He was Mu'tazili. Different sect. A deviated sect. I think it's about Imam Sibwe. I'm pretty sure it is. So, he once, somebody saw him in his dream after he passed away and said, how was your reckoning? He said, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was going to throw me in the hellfire because of my aqidah being wrong, corrupt. But he let me off for one thing. He said, what? He said, once I was crossing the street and I saw a piece of paper on the ground. I picked up that piece of paper and it said, Allah. And I felt bad that the name of Allah is on the ground. He said, I picked it up, I took it to my house, I cleaned it, and I put perfume on it, and I put it up high on the shelf. And for that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgave me. Adab. That's all it was. It was adab. Basically, what I'm saying to all of us is we all need to develop this level of adab. Right? And you'll see yourself, when your love for Allah and His Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam increase, you'll start feeling more sensitive about the sunnahs of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. You'll be more sensitive about, why is this miswak on the ground? I should put it up. Why is this Quran on the ground? It doesn't look good. No, I should put it up. And of course, we can all give many different examples. But the point is that we become very, very sensitive. So Mu'adh bin Jabal radiyallahu anhu had a question. He had a question. Once him and this other Sahabi by the name of Tha'laba bin Ghanama radiyallahu anhu, both of them, they had a question. They came to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and asked him. They said, Ya Rasulullah, it's a question, very interesting question, kind of like a scientific question. Said, Ya Rasulullah, you see this moon? It goes through so many different phases. So in the beginning of the month, it's a crescent with a certain shape. I mean, it's a crescent shape, but the concave and the convex side is different than it is from the end of the month. And then slowly increases until 13, 14, 15, it's a full moon. And then slowly it starts decreasing, but now the side of the crescent is different. Now it's the opposite that it was from the beginning of the month. And slowly it decreases until you can't even see it. It's gone. And then it comes back again for the next month. What's this whole thing all about? All these phases of the moon, what's it all about? So they asked Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam this question. They said, "Ma bal al-hilal yabdu mutatalli'an fa yazid thumma la yazalu yanqusu wa yadqu hatta ya'uda." Hatta ya'uda kama kan. So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam didn't reply. But instead, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala responded with an ayah of Quran Kareem in Surah Baqarah. يَسْأَلُونَكَ عَنِ الْأَهِلَّةِ They ask you about the moon. قُلْ هِيَ مَوَاقِيتُ لِلنَّاسِ وَالْحَجِّ Tell them that it's for measuring time. And for Hajj. How do you know when Hajj time is near? When the sun comes out, right? When the moon for Dhul Hijjah, the month of Dhul Hijjah comes, that's when you know that Hajj is near. But even for you to know that this is the moon of Dhul Hijjah, you have to know the moon for each and every month. That means you're checking the moon every single month. We check the moon only in Ramadan and for Eid, for Dhul Hijjah. And then we fight about it. Moon fighting, they say moon fighting instead of moon sighting. But the purpose is to measure time. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created these different phenomenon, like the phases of the moon, specifically for our ibadat. He specifically talks about Hajj. Right? For Hajj. For Ramadan, Ramadan is also, we know it by the moon, not by the sun. So our fasting starts and ends with the moon. Right. So 2 pillars of Islam are based off of the phases of the moon. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made these phases of the moon, and He made the sun, and He made the stars, He made all these things. Why? For our ibadat. For us to live as true servants of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What we do instead is, we say, wow. Which is good if it makes you in awe of the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and brings you closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's great. But if you're doing it and you start doing research and you get caught up in how the phases of the moon happen and why it happens, and then you do whole research on it, but it doesn't bring you any closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what's the purpose? People are sitting in universities and doing scientific research night and day about different things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created. Right? And they're not one step closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Even though Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created those very things for them to recognize Him. Right? All these things have been created for us to recognize Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. For our own ibadat, to become better servants of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين. Inshallah, we'll continue this tomorrow. There's a miracle. There's a miracle that took place in Tabuk, and I asked one of the brothers today about it. Has this happened? Because he's been to Tabuk and he did research. And mashallah, he's a Saudi brother, born and raised there, so he knows the place inside out. And he went with a whole group of people just to do tahqiq, research on the different landmarks and historical sites from the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So Tabuk was one of the places that they went to. And there's a hadith narrated by Mu'adh bin Jabal Radhi-Allahu that narrates that miracle about Tabuk that we're going to talk about inshallah tomorrow. So to be continued. سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين. جزاكم الله خير.